Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Fantasy and Frames kindly brings to you the okayest fantasy football podcast in the world. I'm your host, Chris Battistel, my co-hosts, Drew Scott and Rhett Manuel, and we are Fourth and Frames. And if you don't like it, we got 4 words for you. Let's get it poppin'.
This should be played at high volume, preferably in a residential area.
All right, gentlemen, we have mocked all the mocks. We have analyzed all the analytics. We have finalized our rankings. Well, at least the 2 of us have. Rhett is still playing catch up. We finally got the most important information, landing spot and draft capital. Fellas, how was your draft weekend and what was the biggest surprise from each of you?
Oh, that biggest surprise! I'll just take the layup, man. It was Michael Penix going to Atlanta at 108. I could have listed the positions I thought they were going to draft at that spot, and quarterback would have been damn near at the very bottom, if not the very bottom. So that was definitely surprising for me.
Yeah, for me, if I was looking at the draft, I mean, we all kind of knew that Jacksonville was maybe looking at wide receiver, but they also kind of needed cornerback a little bit more. So, with Jacksonville, they're just kind of one of these teams where you're never quite sure what they're going to do. So I thought the fact that they traded down, still had the opportunity to get a Terry and Honor or something like that, but still ended up with Brian Thomas Jr., even though they've signed Gabe Davis, even though Zay Jones is on the roster, all these different things. I mean, it's a semi-surprising move at the end of the day.
As
soon
as the Falcons made that pick, I tuned into the Fantasy and Frame stream because I had to check in on Keith Fleming. I had to see the meltdown, and of course he delivered. But Drew, as a Saints fan, you know that the Atlanta Falcons always fumble the draft, so it's not a big surprise to us Saints fans. What was a big surprise is that the Saints actually had a good draft, man. Usually they do so bad. And one of the other surprises was probably the Buffalo Bills trading back in the first round for the Kansas City Chiefs to move up and pick Xavier Worthy. So, yeah, exactly. That was kind of a surprise of the draft for me. I didn't see that coming, at least between those 2 teams, especially because Buffalo was already saying that they weren't going to trade Diggs to the Chiefs in the first place. So
that's the part that was surprising to me. I didn't hate the move of them trading back. If they still thought the receiver they wanted was going to be there, if they could trade back, that's fine. But of all teams, you're going to help out Kansas City move up and get their guy. These guys have been whooping y'all's ass every year. There's a principle to this. You got to stand on it. You can't do that, man.
Yeah. Hey, look. Let's be honest with Buffalo. At the end of the day, they trade back twice. They end up getting Keon Coleman at 33. And I'll tell you what, I don't know if this was completely a marketing move, but whether it was or whether it wasn't, at the end of the day, Buffalo ended up winning the draft in the eyes of the social media landscape anyway, because when Keon Coleman came out and talking about that canary yellow jacket for $80 at Macy's, and then he's talking about the trench coat, and he keeps on, as clips keep coming out, keeps on talking about this $80 coat that he got from Macy's. I mean, what a treat of a human being. Buffalo already won the draft in my eyes, and I hope that kid takes off and is wide receiver 1 this year. I'm not even lying.
Yeah, and he's gonna have a great time shopping in Buffalo for jackets in July. He's gonna need them, that's for sure.
He will need them, yes.
He's gonna need them. We appreciate each and every single person that's tuned in. Drop a question in the chat. We will answer it live on the air. We're going to be talking about some of our favorite landing spots with these rookies. We're going to each give you a sleeper that we've personally picked out of the class, and then we're going to jump into our favorite segment, Master-Debation, where we go one-on-one with certain situations, and then one of us picks the winner as well as the viewers and listeners. So I'm excited to get to that part of our show, but I guess let's jump right into it. let's get into breaking down these rookies and these landing spots. And let's talk about the quarterbacks, 6 quarterbacks taken in the first round.
In the first 12 picks.
In the first 12 picks, yeah, let alone the first round. Historic, nothing that we've ever seen, and probably nothing, at least in our lifetime, nothing that we'll ever see again. But Drew, who will be the bust of the big 3? And that's right now Drake Maye, Jayden Daniels, and Caleb Williams.
If we're talking about like fantasy football bust,
yeah, of course, it's a fantasy football show, baby.
I just making sure. Yeah, I hate trying to make NFL bust calls this early on, but fantasy wise, of the big 3, it seems like it's probably gonna be Drake Maye just because of the lack of weapons. Now, New England did make some progress in that area, picking up Polk and Javon Baker. We'll talk about some of those guys a little bit later, but it's hard to see. I've got all the faith in the world in Caleb Williams. It's not even in consideration to pick him in this for me. So then it comes to Daniels and Maye, and it's hard to even see a world where Daniels busts with the floor that he has from the rushing abilities. Like even if he's not a top 5 quarterback, like his floor feels so safe that I don't know if he's going to be an outright bust. Whereas like Drake May's not a statue, but to me, he's more like in the Trevor Lawrence area in terms of rushing. Like he can do it, he will do it, but it's not the Jayden Daniels level. So if I had to pick one of the 3, I'd probably pick Drake Maye for this year.
And I'm going to disagree with you wholeheartedly and say that Jayden Daniels is probably the most likely to bust among those 3, because you say because of the floor, he's the one that's least likely to bust. And in theory, you're right. Except we have a very recent example of an overdrafted quarterback who has a fantastic rushing floor that never delivers on a yearly basis, and that's Daniel Jones. So Daniel Jones is one of these guys who gets 700 rushing yards every year. You know, he has all these great rushing games. And then as a passer...
do you think Jayden Daniels is Daniel Jones-esque? Like, is that your projection for Jayden Daniels?
What I'm saying is I'm saying that in terms of who he is as a quarterback, just like Daniel Jones, he is going to have a little bit of a learning curve to the pro game. His approach, there's questions. He holds the ball for too long. He has happy feet. He likes to get out of the pocket a little bit too quickly. He made his money on the deep ball last year. And as we know, deep balls are the most volatile place where you're going to make throws in fantasy football. He's going to have to learn how to get through those progressions and get to those short and middle area throws on top of that. And on top of that, with this rushing floor, and yes, like I said, I agree, the floor is there. He's also a good solid 10 to 15 pounds away from being a guy that you don't cringe every time he gets hit and potentially gets broken in half. Also, Caleb and Drake, better passing tools. And therefore, we talked about Trevor Lawrence and the ability he has as a rusher. If Drake Maye has a Trevor Lawrence-esque profile, we're still touting Trevor Lawrence as a quarterback 1, borderline high-end quarterback 2 every year in fantasy football. I mean, we're still waiting on that breakout season. So for me, I mean, we're splitting hairs here between the 2, but give me Jayden Daniels right now. But like I said, in year 1, I think he's the guy you want. Absolutely.
Interesting. Where does
Daniel Jones was quarterback 9 in 2022, by the way?
And in 2020,
I just want to throw that out there. That's all.
That's fair.
That's fair. Can't argue with that. The stew with JT Brewer, guy Justin Taylor. I agree with Rhett. I think Daniels has the biggest bust potential. I just can't draft him. Rhett, where would you put Jayden Daniels in last year's draft class with CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, and Anthony Richardson?
He's quarterback 4 in that situation easily.
Right behind all 3 of them?
Yeah.
You feel the same way, Drew? You're nodding. Yeah, you feel the same way with that?
I would agree.
All right. Where would you put Drake Maye?
Right behind him.
So I would say that as well. So he'd be quarterback 5 in that situation.
All right. And then Caleb Williams?
See, it's tough.
That's a tough one because we kind of have that. We know what CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson and what some of these guys are already in the NFL, right? So it's kind of going to skew your view a little bit there.
In the vacuum of last year where Caleb would still be the prospect that he is, he probably would have been seen as the quarterback 1 in that situation. So I'm going to say he'd have been quarterback 1 in that case.
Drew?
I mean, if we're going off what we know now, I would at least have Stroud in front of him. He's probably going to come in really close between, like with Anthony Richardson. He's probably around the area he's going to be in.
Yeah. That's I can kind of agree with that there. And then we have the later three of the quarterbacks: JJ McCarthy, Bo Nix, and Michael Penix, who we talked about at the top of the show. Which of the three at the back has the most potential to be the stand out the most, to be the better fantasy asset out of the three? And we'll start with you, Rhett.
Let's go ahead and I got two answers here. I got a 1A and a 1B. This year, I think Bo Nix probably has the most potential. He's the most pro ready, does the best with his progressions. Probably has a situation where Cortland Sutton and all those guys he can dump off. I think he's got more of a steady floor for this year. Long term, also Josh Reynolds in that Denver receiver room, an underrated asset who I think has some fantasy value this year. Down the line, it's going to be JJ McCarthy, maybe as soon as this year, because I think he's sitting to start the year because of those raw tools that he has, and Sam Darnold having experience in the league. But when you come down to it, you have a guy that's going to be playing with Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, and just Aaron Jones and a variety of weapons. By the end of the year, I think most definitely JJ McCarthy is your guy.
Yep. Okay. I agree with that. He's set up perfectly between the three of them, because the Denver situation can turn out to be so volatile, and then we don't know what's going to same with Atlanta there. Like, we all like Raheem Mostert and the offensive coordinator that they brought in from the Rams with them, but another situation that can turn bad because of the front office and what the front office has done in the draft since they've been there. So I kind of agree. JJ McCarthy is probably in the best spot. So that is the quarterbacks. Let's talk the wide receivers. Day 1 and day 2 wide receivers. It was touted to be a pretty strong class. We saw the guys that we knew were going to go in round one, but some of the guys we kind of thought would maybe get that day 2 capital dropped to day 3, like Troy Franklin, Javon Baker, some of these other big names that some of us had in the top 5, 7 of the rookie rankings.
Time out though. The Troy Franklin dropping to day 3 is literally dropping to day 3 by 2 picks. So I mean, let's
he's gonna get that take, Rhett.
That's a molehill out of a mountain, right? That a mountain out of a molehill, man. That's crazy to me. Anyway,
it is, but he's still gonna get that. He's still a day 3 dropping. He's still gonna get that day 3 tag. Still counts. Let's talk about the day 1 and day 2 guys. Out of Rome Odunze and Malik Neighbors, who has the best chance of finishing ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr. as the rookie wide receiver 1 this year? Rhett, which one do you think takes it? Odunze in Chicago with the pieces in front of him, or Malik Neighbors? Not too much pieces in front of him, but the guy throwing the ball, like, we don't even know who it is going to be at this point. It could be Drew Lock, could be Daniel Jones.
Yeah. First off, shout out Malik Neighbors for being the most disrespectful human being possible in his introductory press conference. Not even calling him by his proper name. And they ask him about him. You know, he could do the thing where he's like, "Oh, Daniel's a great player. Can't wait to get into the room with him. He's really athletic." He's like, we'll see. All that to say, do we really see a scenario where Malik Neighbors isn't walking into 120 target minimum this season? I mean, because that's where we are with that. And I don't care who the quarterback is. Volume matters in fantasy football. And if you have a guy with less target competition and a quarterback who doesn't have a learning curve to deal with, I know Daniel Jones isn't exciting. I just went ahead and poo-pooed him just a couple minutes ago. But he knows his Brian Daboll offense. He knows the league. And the talent of Malik Neighbors and the opportunity that he has are just too much for me to pass up on him. So if I have to bank on anybody being the guy who could possibly overtake Marvin Harrison Jr. For wide receiver 1 in his rookie year, it's got to be Neighbors.
Yeah. I can see that, just especially year 1. Drew, are you on the fence with that? You agree with Neighbors there, or you think Odunze has an outside shot?
No, I mean, not without having to predict injury, and I don't want to go down that route. So, yeah, it would be Neighbors for me, too.
All right. And we talked about him a little at the top with the surprise of the Buffalo Bill trade back with the Kansas City Chiefs. But how much was Xavier Worthy's value in these rookie drafts coming from where he landed? So let's say Xavier Worthy lands on a team like the Tennessee Titans, a loaded room, not as sexy of an offense, Rhett. Are we still picking Xavier Worthy as a top 5, top 6 wide receiver?
No, we're not. Well, top 6 maybe, but is he going in the top 6 or 7 of 1 QB rookie drafts? No, at that point he's not. To put it very eloquently, as we've seen in the past, he was CEH'd into the spot where he is in fantasy drafts right now, which is he's going into the Chiefs offense. Everybody loves Patrick Mahomes. Everybody loves the opportunity. Everyone loves Andy Reid. So, of course, he's going to be a guy who gets boosted up a little bit by landing spot, like a lot of guys are, just like Keon Coleman is being boosted up as well because he's going into Buffalo. All that being said, he's so much more than just a fast guy like people are making him out to be. I mean, he's such a smooth route runner. He has the ability to separate. So he's one of these guys that is getting boosted by a landing spot, but I think he's also a guy that, like the Chiefs want to do and put about a good 15 pounds on him. I mean, I think they see the possibility of a Tyreek Hill type of guy within Xavier Worthy, which is why they probably drafted him. They've been looking for that for a couple years since they traded him. So I think that's what they envision. Can he become what Tyreek Hill is in the league? I don't know. It's way too soon to predict that. But I think we see where the skill set is and where they would see something like that.
Yeah, that's fair. Like it'd be tough for me to put him in the top 4 where I have him now if he's attached to a team like the Tennessee Titans, or if he goes to a team that maybe doesn't stretch the field as much. So yeah, you're right there with the CEH stuff with some of these guys landing on some of these teams. And there's also the opposite effect of that. You got guys landing on teams where like a guy like BTJ, who some are projecting to be a little bit of a sunken valued wide receiver because of the players he's behind. So with that, and with Adonai Mitchell going to the Indianapolis Colts and maybe not seeing as much traffic in front of him when it comes to getting onto the field, Drew, who's the wide receiver you want to have as a dynasty manager in a 3-year window? Is it Adonai Mitchell or is it Brian Thomas Jr.?
It's probably Brian Thomas Jr. still. I like AD's talent, but I think his ceiling during that 3-year window is probably the wide receiver 2 for the Colts. And I expect Jacksonville's going to throw the ball more with Trevor Lawrence than the Colts will with Anthony Richardson. And I do think Brian Thomas Jr. could possibly work his way up to being the wide receiver 1 at some point during that 3-year window. So I think his ceiling's a little bit higher over those first 3 years. So give me Brian Thomas.
Yeah, the Rhett. Are you on the? I know you're on the Brian. I don't gotta ask Rhett. Rhett's on the. Just keep the conductor of the train. He's got the conductor hat. He's got the steam whistle. He just rolling down the tracks, man.
Yeah, I love Brian Thomas, but the thing is, he plays a more effort. But he was more of a one-dimensional player in college. We've seen the yards per route run stuff prior to this past season, where all of a sudden he exploded and became this prospect that he is. The thing is with this, I don't know that we've seen the full bloom of what AD Mitchell can truly be, because he's been a guy that's kind of called a guy who takes plays off and whatever you want to call that. So for me right now, I'm going to say Thomas, but it honestly could be too close to call, because what if Adonai Mitchell does become one of these guys that kind of explodes and comes out of nowhere and just is a dude that matches up the effort with the physical skill set? In that case, you have somebody who is very dangerous.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then the Los Angeles Chargers were at a prime spot in the middle of the first round. We saw Marvin Harrison go to the Arizona Cardinals, and then they could have had their pick of Malik Neighbors or Rome Odunze. We were all hoping for Justin Herbert's sake that the Los Angeles Chargers picked up one of these wide receivers, but they knew, they picked who we all knew they were going to pick. They were going to address the lines, and that's what they did. They went with Joe Alt. Did they mess up? Yeah, exactly. Did they mess up by not taking one of the two high-rated wide receivers? Or is Ladd McConkey, the player that they did pick, walking into the best case scenario for Ladd McConkey?
Yes, they did screw up, and yes, he is walking into the best scenario. So it's both of them for me. Ladd is walking into a spot that is very, very similar to what he dealt with in Georgia. You have this run-first offense that wants to focus on the running backs and running the football. And then, honestly, once some of that pressure is taken off, you have a quarterback in Justin Herbert who is going to find his spots and be able to find Ladd McConkey and let Ladd McConkey do his thing. The thing is with Ladd McConkey is this. I see him as a late first round, early second round guy in rookie drafts. All that saying is in that late first round, early second round, if you're getting a guy who's around a 50 to 60 catch season, with Ladd, what's a great season for Ladd this year? Is it 65? Is it 70 catches? Is that our ceiling? What do you think?
Yeah, I think first year, I think that's pretty good to say that's his ceiling. Anything above that we'll take as fantasy managers, and we'll take based on where he's getting drafted. So I kind of like that. I think it was best case scenario for Ladd McConkey. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. There's really nobody in from. They have Quentin Johnson. There, Josh Palmer's there, but as an asset in the offense that they want to run, and the system that we've seen Greg Roman and Harbaugh run, I think it's going to fit well into what they want to do. So let's get into the day two running backs. There wasn't much day two running backs picked, only 4 of them: Jonathan Brooks, Trey Benson, Blake Corum, and Marshawn Lloyd. Brooks being the only running back picked in the second round. Drew, keep, trade, cut the next 3: Blake Corum, Trey Benson, and Marshawn Lloyd.
All right, I'm going to keep Trey Benson, even though I think I could get the most out of him in a trade. I think he's such a clear better fantasy asset than the next 2. I'm going to hold on to Trey Benson. I'm going to trade Blake Corum because I know he had a hive of guys that were really high on him pre-draft. I was not a part of it, but I know he's got a fan base out there, and then he got the day 2 draft capital. He's in a good offense. Some people are wishy-washy on Kyron Williams, so I think I could get good value out of Blake Corum, and then so I guess that leaves Marshawn Lloyd to be cut. But yeah, I'm holding on to Trey Benson.
Rhett, you in the same boat as that? You keeping Trey Benson?
Yeah, we're keeping Benson, we're trading Lloyd, and we're cutting Corum, and here's why. And I was going to talk about Marshawn Lloyd a little bit later, but what I'm going to say is this. The Green Bay Packers made a very non-committed commitment to A.J. Dillon this offseason with a 1-year, $1 million contract, which tells me that if they're drafting Marshawn Lloyd in the 3rd round, there's a very real possibility that he's going to have every opportunity to win the second running back spot in camp. So I just think it's interesting.
That's fair. And we know, I've talked about it with you guys quite a bit. The 2025 class is projected to be, at least my projections, to be quite loaded at the running back position. How many of the 4 are relevant post 2025 draft? We'll start with you, Drew.
I'm saying, Rhett, I don't know if you feel different, but on Jonathan Brooks and Trey Benson are about the only 2 that I feel really confident in their role moving forward. Outside of that, it wouldn't shock me to see the Rams spend another pick on a running back. I know we all want the Green Bay Packers to just cut Josh Jacobs after year 1 because his contract is, they could get out of the Josh Jacobs contract after year 1, and then maybe a bigger role opens up for Marshawn Lloyd, but that's not necessarily a guarantee either. So Lloyd might still have Josh Jacobs in front of him. So outside of Brooks and Benson, I wouldn't blame you if you just wanted to fade this class for the most part at running back.
No, I agree with you. It's Brooks and Benson because Brooks is running in to presumably that running back 1 chair day 1. Supposedly he's going to be ready for training camp. And then Trey Benson, you have James Conner in front of him, who's 29 years old. That 30-year-old running back chair is a very dangerous one to be sitting on. It's liable to break at any moment. So I'm with you. You have 2 guys that are viable heading into 2025. Anything after that, if you happen to be hitting on Lloyd, if you happen to be hitting on Corum, you're playing with house money at that point and you're winning. So.
Yep, I dig it. Got a question from the boss, man, Jorge Edwards. What's good, fam? Is Ladd McConkey a back-end first-round pick in rookie drafts now? You can give me both super flex and 1 QB if you guys want. Go ahead with you first there, Rhett.
Looking at my rankings right now, I have Ladd as the 201 in Superflex, and in single quarterback, I have him as the 110. So I would say that Ladd McConkey is most definitely a late first-round draft pick in these rookie drafts right now.
Yeah, I've got him at 203 in Superflex, so he's just outside that first-round range as far as Superflex goes. 1 quarterback, I've got him at the 111, so he is a back-end first-rounder for me in 1 quarterback. But Superflex, there's a few guys I've got ahead of him, and I did, as much as as gross as I felt doing it, I did push Bo Nix into the first round at the 112 after he got the draft capital and the immediate landing spot. It's just that value is going to end up carrying, even if he comes out and absolutely sucks in year 1, he's going to hold some value in Superflex leagues because he's going to get the chance to start for a few years. So I bumped him up to the back end of the first. So Ladd was one of the guys that got bumped down a couple spots post-draft because of that.
Yep, there you have it. All right, let's get into the tight end of tight ends in this draft class. Brock Bowers. I was really hoping, I don't know if you were, Rhett, but I was really hoping that Brock Bowers, I mean, as a Saints fan, I wasn't kind of like, we knew that the Saints had to address the offensive line or the defensive line, and there was good pieces on the board, which they did pick. But I mean, Brock Bowers was there, and you know, fantasy-wise, him tied to Derek Carr was a pretty sexy landing spot. But he ends up on the Las Vegas Raiders, and we were talking a little bit about it today in the group chat there, and where you had him ranked, Rhett. But what are we doing with Brock Bowers year 1, and what is our overall expectation there? And we'll start with you, Drew.
So year 1, I think to start it off, he's probably going to go back and forth with Jacoby Myers as the second target in the offense. Like, I think Devontae Adams will be the number 1 there, and then it'll be kind of a rotation where 1 week it'll be Jacoby, 1 week it'll be Brock Bowers. But I do think eventually down the stretch in his rookie year, because of how talented he is, that he's going to end up demanding enough work that he'll end up being the clear number 2 option in this offense. And then, I mean, look, Adams isn't getting any younger. The Raiders aren't looking like they're getting any better. I can't imagine that he's going to want to end his career playing on a team that's performing this poorly. So we'll see how long Devontae Adams sticks out. But I could see a world where as soon as his second year in the league, he's the number 1 passing option in this offense. So I don't have him in my startup rankings yet. That's what I'm working on now, is getting these rookies into the startups. But if I had to guess, he's probably going to come in behind Laporta and McBride, probably in that tight end 3, tight end 4 overall right off the rip. I mean, this guy's college profile is just incredible. And I know we don't love the landing spot, but the reality is Brock Bowers' talent didn't get any worse just because he got drafted on the Raiders. Like, he's still the guy that we've loved through this entire process, and talent is going to win out. Like, the coaching staff, the quarterback, that stuff can turn over so quickly to where Brock Bowers' value can get smoothed out quicker than we expect. So I'm not going to drastically move him down just because the landing spot isn't as shiny as we would have hoped. So he's still going to be up there in the top. He'll definitely be in my top 5 overall tight ends.
And actually, Drew, I'm going to disagree with you. After my initial response to him being drafted by the Raiders, I'm actually kind of in on this Brock Bowers landing spot, and here's why. Tell me when he's leaving the field. He's playing their slot. He's in on 12 personnel. His snap share is going to be pushing 90% at least this season. And if he's the second target in this offense and he has a 90% snap share in year 1, that's big time. So that's where I am on that.
Yeah, I really don't mind it either, honestly.
All right. I like it. So that is the main talking points for some of the rookie landing spots, especially some of the big names that come out of the 2024 draft class. Now we're each going to give you a sleeper and a guy that we think is a potential breakout, someone that you're going to be able to maybe draft in the 3rd, 4th rounds of your rookie drafts. And Drew, I mean, you've got a nice one. A decent wide receiver, a guy that I know our dear friend Gator J is high on, but I think his bias shows a little bit with that one. But give us your sleeper target for the draft class, man.
Yeah, it's Jalen McMillan, and I think if he didn't deal with the injuries, his last season we'd be viewing him a lot differently. Because I mean, 2 years ago, Jalen McMillan was pushing Romo Dunze, and as far as who was going to be the number one target there in that Washington offense, and he had the injuries, and that opens up a lot of questions of like, what does Jalen Polk look like if Jalen McMillan doesn't get hurt and plays the whole year? I think that his talent is being slept on a little bit. I like the fact that Tampa invested a decent draft pick on him, nothing crazy, but I can see a role, not so much in year 1, but year 2, Chris Godwin is a free agent, if I'm not mistaken, after this season. And I think Jalen McMillan can do a lot of the things Chris Godwin does. They're pretty similar in size. McMillan is a little bit lighter, but I think that their play styles are somewhat similar, and I could see him sliding into the Chris Godwin role next to Mike Evans in his 2nd year. So year 1, you might not see a ton of return for him, but you really don't have to draft him until around round 4, late round 3 right now anyway. And I think by his 2nd year, that could look like a real value.
Yeah, and I love the Jalen McMillan pick myself. Go ahead, Rhett.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say that Troy Franklin getting into that Denver offense, I think is an interesting spot here. He's now technically, as we spoke about, a day 3 draft pick, which if we're getting into analytics, the hit rate on day 3 guys isn't especially high. But what we're looking at is a guy who is stepping into the vaunted, whatever you want to call it, whether it was all hype or not. This is a Sean Payton offense, and that still holds some cachet with some people. He's also walking into a spot where, according to some depth charts, he is behind only one person before he lands in that starting lineup, and that would be Josh Reynolds. Now, I like Josh Reynolds as a player. I think he's perfectly solid. He's perfectly serviceable. The drop rate aside with Troy Franklin and the poor testing aside, we've seen what Troy Franklin can do on a football field. And Troy Franklin is just one of these guys that, before the combine, when he tested poorly, some people had him as a possible 1st-round pick. So the talent is still there. Just because he tested poorly doesn't make him any less talented of a player. Couple that with the fact that he is going to be playing with his college quarterback, the good old shower narrative that we're all a huge fan of. And I think Troy Franklin is a very interesting guy to look at, maybe as a late flyer in your rookie drafts, maybe late 2nd, 3rd round, and even later in your redrafts if you're doing those sort of things. So Troy Franklin's a guy that I think is worth a flyer on this year for sure.
Yeah,
Drew, man, where Troy Franklin is a flyer now. Rhett's not wrong. I mean, that's the range he's in now, but that's just that's so depressing, man. Oh, it's so depressing.
It was heartbreaking to see him fall down the draft board, just keep seeing him slip pick after pick. I'm like, okay, this team, the Patriots need a wide receiver. This is going to be the guy. This is where they take him. They don't take him. Okay, the Panthers need a wide receiver. They're going to take him. They don't take him. The Saints need a wide receiver. They need someone else in that room. They're going to take him. They don't take him. There's so many times where I was just like, this is where he gets picked, and you just see him fall. But like you said, Rhett, it's day 3 draft capital, but it's the first couple picks in the 4th round. So how much weight do we want to put in to that day 3 tag? And right now it's going to hold a little bit of weight, but it's not going to hold a ton of weight. I just want to see how that wide receiver room shakes out as a whole, and I want to see who the starting quarterback is. Are we all projecting Bo Nix to be the starting quarterback for Denver in week 1?
Week 1, yep.
It better be. I'll just say that. It better be.
Right.
because they didn't pick up Zach Wilson's fifth-year option, which we knew that they were going to do, and then they got Jared Stidham there as well. Bo Nix, I guess, is the best of the worst.
That's an interesting way of putting it. Yeah.
All right. My sleeper and potential breakout is Dylan Labe, running back from the Las Vegas Raiders. He's really got no one in front of him that is a pass-catching running back. He can walk into that team and steal that role. That is not something Zamir White does. Zamir White can be the workhorse running back for the Las Vegas Raiders, and then Labe can come in and steal some of that pass-catching work. Just last year, Zamir White, 19 targets, 15 receptions, not the sexiest bunch of numbers. They did bring in Alexander Madison, our favorite running back here on Fourth and Frames, but still, he saw a decent amount of targets and receptions in Minnesota, but he wasn't overall dynamic with the ball in his hands. Labe can be that guy, and we've seen Labe do it. He's also had a season where he has rushed for over 1,000 yards. He totes the ball 245 times. He's a late declare, so that is a bit of patina on his silver, on his shine. But I like the situation there in Las Vegas just because of the guys that are in front of him. It's Amir Abdullah, it's Alexander Madison, and then it's just going to be the bowling ball that is Zeus White. So for me, I don't know if you guys are that high on Dylan Labe. I'm not saying I'm potentially high on Dylan Labe. I'm like Bill Clinton smoking a joint high. I'm not inhaling it. I'm just holding it in my mouth and blowing it out. So I'm not high, but I'm like feeling the buzz, man. I'm high off the vibes with Dylan Labe. That's how I'm going to put it.
Yeah, there's some vibes there. Yeah.
Yeah, there's vibes, late fourth vibes, but vibes nonetheless.
Yeah,
right?
I agree. I think he ends up carving out that RB2 role and that pass catching role, that offense. Like the guys that you named in front of him, like Amir Abdullah, Alexander Madison, like they don't scare me into thinking he's not going to work his way up to RB2 on the depth chart.
Yeah, and they're not scary. And Dylan, he can definitely be that guy with the Raiders. So our sleepers and potential breakouts: Jalen McMillan. I mean, it hurts to say it, but Troy Franklin and Dylan Labe. That's it for our sleepers and potential breakouts. Let's get into our favorite segment. Let's get into Master-Debation. Our first topic, we got Javon Baker versus Tez Walker. Drew is going to represent Javon Baker, and Rhett is going to represent Devontez Walker. We are talking about day 3 wide receivers, to day 3 or to not day 3. That is the question. Some of these wide receivers were our potential darlings heading into the NFL draft, and now they have shattered our hearts. But we're going to hear why we should either pick Javon Baker or why we should invest in Tez Walker. Drew, please don't filibust, but you are the first speaker. The floor is yours.
Oh, you had to make me go first. So for me, this one comes down to the fact that I like Javon Baker better as a player pre-draft, and I ended up liking his landing spot more post-draft. And so don't hear what I'm not saying. I would rather my receiver be tied to Lamar Jackson over Drake May. And I like Drake May, but I love Lamar. But with Javon Baker landing in New England with Drake May, being the wide receiver 1 on his team is within the range of outcomes. Now, draft capital would indicate that Jalen Polk might come in and be the guy, but with the talent Javon Baker showed us in college, at worst, I think he does eventually end up as the second option in this offense. I mean, the guy had 2.53 yards per route run across his college career. He had a 17.1 average depth of target, which was third best in this class, 7.2 yards after catch per reception, which was third best in the class. And if you look at his reception perception profile compared to Devontez Walker's, it's not even remotely close. The dude's a much better route runner as well. And with Devontez Walker, he does have the upper hand at quarterback, but I think his ceiling for the foreseeable future is to be the third option in that offense behind Mark Andrews and Zay Flowers. And then that's just assuming that he isn't also behind Rashad Bateman, who they did just pay to stick around. You know, I'm just saying, Rashad Bateman, I'm not gonna quit you. So last year during Lamar Jackson's MVP season, the third option for the Ravens finished as the wide receiver 66. And then in Lamar's first MVP season, his third option was the wide receiver 89 in fantasy points per game. And so it's just like Lamar himself is incredible for real life purposes and NFL purposes, but he doesn't need to support three receivers, three pass catching options to be a great fantasy asset. And I just think Devontez Walker is going to be too far down the pecking order. So as incredible as an asset as Lamar is, I just think that Javon Baker, he was the better player pre-draft, and now he's in a situation post-draft where he's going to have more opportunities right off the rip. So give me Javon Baker.
All right, before we go any further, I'm just going to go say that, Chris, I thought we had a discussion before we started that we were going to have a hard 45 to 60-second cap. And Drew's over here taking half of the show for his first take. Drew, you're a sinner.
You just took 15 seconds to complain. That
all
just
right,
tells
that's
me
because
that
I'm
your
going to take
argument
these
ain't
last
ready.
30 and knock this out real quick.
Order.
All right, so let me just say this about Tez Walker and the Baltimore Ravens. There is no real deep pass threat in this offense. Last year, their down the field guy down the stretch was Isaiah Likely, who's not really even a deep threat, guys. So what we're talking about with this is you are giving Lamar Jackson a guy who can actually stretch the field for him, open up things for Zay Flowers, open up things for Mark Andrews. And as a result, he's getting up the field. He's going to make some plays too. And yeah, you're saying his ceiling is to be the third guy in a passing offense. And you're giving me wide receiver 89 or whatever it is, when wide receiver 89 or whatever it was some jabroni like Nelson Aguilar last year because Odell Beckham was hurt for half of the season, which, by the way, just to make it clear, do you know who Tez Walker has to beat to get to that third wide receiver chair? That same jabroni we're talking about in Nelson Aguilar. So I don't care about your Javon Baker, man. I don't care about your Javon Baker man crush. I don't care about Jalen Polk. I care that the New England Patriots are going to suck, that Drake Maye is going to have a steep learning curve, and that Tez Walker is walking into a much better year one situation.
So you're perfectly fine with him being a bad route runner. We're good with that.
He's stretching the field, and if he gets a 50-yard touchdown every few weeks, we're fine.
So he's better in best ball, which is just another way of saying that he's not good. So I'm glad we got that settled. Thank you for that.
He got the ultimate kiss of death with he's a best ball wide receiver, and that is no bueno when it comes to wide receivers, especially rookie wide receivers. With this round, Javon Baker, Tez Walker, you've heard the arguments, chat. Let us know who your pick is. But my pick is, I'm sorry, Rhett, but it's going to go to Drew with Javon Baker. I think he's the guy that's going to be the one.
This segment has always been biased. I don't even care anymore.
I'm waiting for the Rhett diss track to come out next week against me and Drew. I'm waiting for
I hate the way you dress. I hate the way you look.
All right, let's get into debate 2. We are talking about running backs and a long-term quarterbacks. And long-term quarterbacks. Go ahead, Rhett. Tell us what we're talking about, man.
All right, we're gonna get between two of the top quarterbacks in the draft. We're not counting Caleb Williams here because he is the obvious quarterback one. But Chris, you're going to take the side of Drake Maye, and Drew, you're going to take the side of Jayden Daniels. And because of the fact that, Drew, I currently hate you and your terrible arguments, Chris is taking the stage first.
Oh, no.
No.
All right. For me, long-term investment, the better quarterback is going to be Drake Maye. And one of the main reasons is he's set up in a better organization. The Washington Commanders is a complete shit show. We know that the front office, we know about the coaching staff not being the coaching staff that they wanted. So right off the rip, Jayden Daniels is not set up for long-term success because we've seen these guys have the constant Rolodex of offensive coordinators and head coaches, and it just doesn't turn out well for them. So with that's a top reason for why Drake Maye with the Patriots is going to overall be a better long-term investment. He has a younger wide receiver core. We just heard Dre talk about Javon Baker. They drafted Jayden Polk. They got Pop Douglas, and they got draft capital to invest into that position as the years go. And we want to talk about deep balls between the two quarterbacks. Drake Maye, just as good, maybe not as efficient of a deep ball thrower as Jayden Daniels, but just as good of a deep ball thrower, almost 100 more attempts over 20 yards than Jayden Daniels, more passing yards over 20 yards than Jayden Daniels. And if we want to look at it, let's put Drake Maye onto LSU and see what he does. And let's put Jayden Daniels onto UNC. And I think we get Arizona State Jayden Daniels. We don't get 2023 late breakout, red flag after red flag. Yes, he won the Heisman, but that's not the overall selling point. We've seen Heisman winners come in, and we've seen Heisman winners leave the league. Another thing that plagued Drake Maye last year ultimately was that his wide receivers like Tez Walker just couldn't catch the ball. There was a ton of drops for him. He was top in the league for wide receiver drops. And that's just one of the things that's not going to happen when he enters the New England Patriots. Jayden Polk has 8 drops in his career at the University of Washington. And if he can be the wide receiver 1 for Drake Maye, I know that Drake Maye is going to be the better long-term investment, because let's just face it, Jayden Daniels is one hit away from being Robert Griffin, and Drake Maye is 2 seasons away from being Josh Allen.
Oh, wow. Okay. So if I didn't realize we were doing a whole if fest where like we were depending on the guys. We're so down bad that we're talking about the reason the guy's going to fail is because the guys that are wearing suits and box offices on Sundays are the reason they're not going to do well. We're talking about ownership. We're talking about like somehow the having a better owner gets you more fantasy points on Sundays. Oh my goodness, man. I think there's an argument to be made that Drake Maye is the better real life NFL prospect, but we're here to talk about we're here to talk about fantasy football though. And now that Jayden Daniels has that number 2 overall draft capital, I feel very confident about his future as a fantasy asset moving forward.
What was Zach Wilson's number 2 overall draft capital?
And thank you for leading me into my next point.
Overall draft capital?
Trey Lance is the one outlier.
So
he is the one outlier.
We can't bring in the suits.
Damn, bro, you ain't go long enough yet.
sorry, Drew. It's been a while.
Trey Lance is the one outlier where he got drafted as high as he did and basically got no shot to start. Everybody else other than that, even Zach Wilson, as bad as he was, still had a long leash with getting to start. Even Blake freaking Bortles, look how long his leash was. Like these guys that Mitchell Trubisky is still getting backup jobs and had starting jobs. Like these guys that are bad, it doesn't matter if they're bad or not. NFL teams give them a longer leash because they're a starter. And I believe Daniels has that top end level rushing upside to where any year he comes in the league as a starter, he's going to have fantasy value just off of that. And like, look at Anthony Richardson right now. The guy played 4 games last year. He only finished 2 games. Man. I'm not talking. I did not say, hey, man, Anthony Richardson, Jayden Daniels are the same football players, so let's talk about it. What I was going to say was, look at Anthony Richardson's dynasty startup value right now. The man played 4 total games last year. He only finished 2 games, and yet he's the quarterback 7 overall in April DFF startup rankings. The guy did, and I'm one of the people, I love Anthony Richardson, but he did nothing last year virtually, and he played 4 games, like 2.5 games, and he's the quarterback 7. So Jayden Daniels can come out. He can play not all that great, but if he has a solid rushing floor, he gets a few rushing touchdowns, and he's lifted up by the offense, then he's going to hold his value. So as far as being a fantasy asset, a dynasty asset, you're going to have a window to be able to sell this guy because he's going to put up weekly finishes that are going to be decent enough because of that rushing floor. And I think he has a slight edge with weapons too. I love Terry McLaurin. I'm a big fan of Ben Sinnott, thanks to this guy that I'm debating. The jury's still out on Jahan Dotson. We'll see. And even though I clearly like Javon Baker, I just talked about that. They brought in Jalen Polk. I still think there's a slight edge that Jayden Daniels has in the weapons. So whenever it comes down to it, I think that both of these guys, they have the solid NFL draft capital. But I think Daniels is going to have a safer floor to where if both of these guys were to come out and stink next year, Daniels' overall fantasy value, I think would still be higher than Drake Maye because of his rushing upside to keep his dynasty value afloat a little bit longer. So worst case scenario, I think you're going to be able to have a longer sell window for him. And best case scenario, I think he has more upside. So give me Jayden Daniels.
Yeah, but you're underestimating Drake Maye's rushing upside?
No,
9 rushing touchdowns last year, 7 rushing touchdowns.
I said it at the top of the show that I think that he is
99 rush yards, 77 times like 2022.
So rushing touchdowns, especially college to NFL, are not sticky at all. Like that's
absolutely
not
I can agree with you there. I can agree with you.
I said at the top that I don't think he's a statue. Like he has mobility. I just think he's more like Trevor Lawrence area, where I think Jayden Daniels is more in the Lamar and Anthony Richardson territory in terms of rushing. Like he's not a statue, but he's not going to give you the week to week.
He's not elite rush.
All right, ladies, you're agreeing too much at this point. I'm out on it. I'm done. I'm ready to go to bed after hearing you guys powwow and kumbaya and decide that you two are going to just be friends at the end of the day. That's not what this is for. So once again, in the comments, pick who you think won that one, whether it was Chris backing Drake Maye or Drew backing Jayden Daniels. But for me, I had to take early in the show where I said that Jayden Daniels is going to be a bigger long-term bust. Not to mention, I'm a little bit salty at Drew right now for taking that first segment. So the points go to Chris Battistel, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, all right. Hey,
another day, another victory for the OG. Taking down the sweats.
Judge Rhett, in your dynasty rankings, who do you where you at on quarterbacks right now?
First off, I'm not part of
right now. That's not the question, Drew.
Yeah,
the question is better long-term investment.
What are dynasty rankings, Chris?
Fair.
Now,
so Rhett, I ask you again, where do you have these guys in your dynasty rankings?
I have Jayden Daniels quarterback 2 and Drake Maye quarterback 4.
Interesting. Okay, so the guy you just said was the worst long-term investment is the guy you have 2 spot hires in your dynasty rankings, and yet you're the one talking about the books being cooked on this segment. I'll be damn, bro. Hey, this is crazy.
Let's switch it up.
We're gonna be consistent no matter what, baby. All right. If we're gonna cook the books, let's cook them across the
consistently
board. All right?
awful. This is crazy.
Consistently bad. Let's get it.
All right. We got to get to the next one. Let's go. You're up, Drew.
All right, so after that terribly cooked debate, it seems like we've got a post-draft consensus that Jonathan Brooks and Trey Benson are the RB1 and RB2, one way or the other, no matter how you shake it. It's one of those 2 guys at the top. So let's talk about the next 2 running backs that were drafted, not quarterbacks. Sorry. Let's talk about the next 2 running backs that came off the board in the 3rd round of the NFL draft. So Rhett's going to tell us why Green Bay Packers running back Marshawn Lloyd is the better dynasty asset. And Chris is going to make the argument for the new Los Angeles Rams running back, Blake Corum. So, Rhett, we're talking running backs, not quarterbacks, again, just to be clear. So, go ahead and tell us why running back Marshawn Lloyd is the better dynasty asset.
All right. First off, to be clear, I do have Marshawn Lloyd higher in my dynasty rankings than Blake Corum. So, first off, let's get the integrity out there, out in the front, full disclosure there. Now, as I said earlier, the Green Bay Packers have made a very non-committed committal to A.J. Dillon, which makes me believe that Marshawn Lloyd has a very real possibility to be that running back 2 chair in Green Bay this season. And if we're looking at their profiles, A.J. Dillon came out a couple years ago, 250 pounds, runs a 4.5, bowling ball of a running back. Marshawn Lloyd, 5'9", 220, a little bit faster, a little bit better pass catching ability. So what we have in Marshawn Lloyd, he is a faster, quicker muscle hamster, also with the pass catching ability on top of that. And as we've talked about earlier, and as I tweeted earlier this week, receptions in fantasy football are 2.54 times more effective in getting fantasy points versus a rushing attempts, which, by the way, I don't know if you guys have seen Blake Corum's pass catching profile. Matter of fact, I don't know if we've seen any Michigan players pass catching profile because they didn't throw the damn ball. So it's not great in that situation. So with the lack of financial investment in A.J. Dillon, like I said, I wouldn't be shocked to see A.J. Dillon cut out of training camp and see Marshawn Lloyd be the handcuff to Josh Jacobs in Green Bay. Whereas Blake Corum's competition is coming off of an RB1 season in fantasy football where he was pretty dang impressive all season. That feels like a little bit tougher of a hill to climb over. So for me, give me Marshawn Lloyd. Chris Battistel, go ahead.
It might be to you the harder situation to overcome with Kyren Williams, but they didn't invest the capital that they invested in Blake Corum in Kyren Williams. And then you want to bring up Marshawn Lloyd being this pass catcher. He doesn't have a season where he's seen over 18 receptions at the college level. He doesn't have that big pass catching profile that you expect everyone talking about Marshawn Lloyd to have. Blake Corum has that. He has a season where he's seen over 24 receptions. Blake Corum had 24 receptions.
Oh my stars.
Marshawn Lloyd doesn't have that. Marshawn Lloyd's highest reception output is only 18, and we're talking about Marshawn Lloyd being the better fantasy asset because he's the pass catcher in that offense. His pass catching profile is not that much better than Josh Jacobs was coming out of Alabama. So let's not keep touting Marshawn Lloyd as this premium pass catching running back when it's just not there. It's not there. He doesn't have that output in college. And if you want to look at Blake Corum, who probably could have came out last season off a 1,400 yard season, 2 seasons of over 1,200 yards rushing, walking into a team that is known for just pumping out these RB1 guys. We've seen them make relevancy out of guys like CJ Johnson. Now they got Kyren Williams there, who, okay, is a guy, but he's not going to be the guy. Blake Corum's pathway to relevancy is lesser than Marshawn Lloyd. He doesn't have a former rushing title holder in front of him. He's only got the one guy. Like I said, he probably should have came out last season, but he wanted to go back to Michigan, win the title, still rushed for over 1,200 yards, coming off a major knee injury nonetheless. So the injury issues, not a big thing for Blake Corum. So the best of the worst running backs for me out of the two, it's gotta be Blake Corum over Fool's Gold in Fumble Rooski, Marshawn Lloyd.
I love whenever we get to talk about Los Angeles Rams running backs. It makes me feel sometimes, we know
where this is going.
Anyway, I think that
Lord have mercy, I'm about to bust.
I'm not gonna be a hypocrite. I've got Blake Corum RB3. I've got Marshawn Lloyd RB4. Give me Blake Corum, man. I think Kyren Williams is going to be. I think Kyren Williams is going to be easier to overtake than Josh Jacobs. So give me Blake.
Yeah, the bias is coming to play. I'm a Rams fan. Let's pick the Ram. Let's get them higher in our rankings. Let's just do it all, Drew. Red goes 0-2 again because you hate me both. Manuel out. Have a great night.
Oh yeah. Terrific. That's all it took to get you to leave. Would have done that a long time ago.
Embarrassing.
All right, guys. That's the show. Appreciate each and every one of you. Make sure you head over to fantasyandframes.com to find our rankings, our rookie rankings. Drew's working on his dynasty rankings to get up on there. Superflex, PPR, overall rankings. So make sure you head over to fantasyandframes.com. Follow at Fantasy in Frames across all social media platforms, and you will get direct access to all of the content that we drop. And we got a lot of content loaded in the chamber, ready to go. We appreciate each and every person that has tuned in and dropped a comment in the chat. Before we get out of here, fellas, the frames are yours. Let the people know where they can find you and let them know what you got going on.
Yeah, I can be found at rmanuel sports on X/Twitter. Just pushing out some tweets where I can. Had a lot of fun doing the NFL draft last week. Gonna be with Howard Bender on a fantasy alarm show tomorrow night at 7:20 Eastern time. We're gonna be talking rookie landing spots, best and worst, a couple other things as well. So gonna be a good time. Besides that, just trying to raise my kids the right way and trying to get through the school year so I can enjoy my summer.
Attaboy. Drew?
Yep. So I'm on Twitter at Drew3MR. You're also going to be able to hear me on Sirius XM on Friday.
Hey!
I'll be on with Howard. Same time as Rhett, just the next day. So Howard showing our show some love here, which we appreciate you, Howard. You're one of the real ones, man.
Yes,
one of the OGs too. Talk about victory for the OGs, man. That guy is he stays winning. So appreciate the hell out of you, Howard. But yeah, so on Twitter at Drew3MR. And then Chris, I want to give you a shout out, man, because the production value of this show has went through the roof here recently, and most people that watch or listen to the show, they don't really understand what it takes to do that, the time commitment, or who even is the one doing it. So I want to make it clear, all this production stuff you see on the show, that is because of our boy Chris here. He puts in a ton of work behind the scenes to make us look good. So shout out to you, man. We appreciate what you do to lift up the show too.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys. Thank you very much. Before we go, we got one last question. Oh, I'll let you guys pop it up. Keep hitting it, taking it off. All right, I'll pop it up. Oh.
Got it.
All right, Pete, need advice for my Friday rookie draft. He has the 101, my QB Stroud, Anthony Richardson or Aaron Rodgers, Russ and Levis, my wide receivers, Drake London, Tank Dell, George Pickens, Keenan Allen. Who do I pick with the 101? Mike, is it a super flex or is it a 1 QB league?
Yeah, and then I also need to know, is that Aaron Rodgers or Anthony Richardson? Because that could change how
Aaron Rodgers. Let's say Aaron Rodgers, A-Rod.
Yeah,
it's not like it's a typo, right? It's not going to be A-Rid. Yeah.
Right,
so it's a super flex league. So what is he doing with the 101 potential trade back? Let him know what maybe it is Rodgers. Let him know what maybe he can look for in the potential trade back as well.
I don't want to trade back. I'm taking Caleb Williams and I'm not looking back. He's the, if I don't have a clear answer, like really clear, I'm talking about like 2 of the top 9-10 options at quarterback, I'm taking Caleb Williams and I'm not looking back. And that's not, Stroud is solid, but if I can add Caleb Williams to that, then then I'm looking up. I think Drake London, he got an uptick in his dynasty value. Tank Dell, Stephon Diggs being there is going to muddy the waters a little bit, but his value is solid. George Pickens, I think he got a slight uptick in value as well with Deontay Johnson not being there anymore. Keenan Allen, now you've got you don't have to stack in Dynasty. Like, it's not the same thing as best ball, but it's fun though. It makes it fun. So you can get the Caleb Williams Keenan stack at least for 1 year. But that honestly, that's just an added bonus that has nothing that doesn't sway my answer either way. But I'm taking Caleb Williams and I'm not looking back.
Yeah, I would agree with going with Caleb first. But if you absolutely want to trade back, you should probably shoot for the stars and probably try to get a Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase or something like that with that 101 to a quarterback needy team. Because if you're not comfortable with your wide receivers and you want a home run guy, you can easily use the 101 to get a home run guy like that at the end of the day. So I'm saying take Caleb, but just understand that's also an option if you really want to do it.
Yeah, the 3 guys behind Stroud is rough. Aaron Rodgers, Russ Wilson, and Will Levis. Quarterback's one of the hardest positions to build out from, especially in Dynasty. So if you can secure Caleb Williams and CJ Stroud, that also gives you a really good chance in competing and making the playoffs. Having 2 guys that could potentially give you the output of a QB1 finish week in and week out, that's what you want on your fantasy roster. So I like that. Thanks for tuning in, Mike. We appreciate you. That's the show. Absolutely. We appreciate each and every person that's tuned in. Like we've already mentioned, Jorge behind the scenes, running the producer role tonight. We appreciate you.
Yes, sir.
That's it for Drew at Through Dream. I can't even talk anymore. He got me all wound up with that Master-Debation segment. For Drew at Drew3MR. For Rhett, we don't like you, Rhett. at our Manual Sports, though, we love you, Rhett. It's always love. I'm Chris. Toodles.